stuck for years. My old friend Joe, been stuck for years. Still got that same old box, grinding slow with tears. He calls me up, said I can't take no more. He calls me up, said I can't take no more. That old drive's dying, won't spin like before. From HDD to NVMe, from HDD to NVMe, from HDD to NVME, that's the way to be free. From HDD to NVME, that's the way to be free. Took him to the shop down on Market Street. Took him to the shop down on Market Street. Said, boy, you need speed, make your machine complete. Change is coming, change is here. Change is coming, now don't you fear. From HDD to NVME, that's the way to be free. From HDD to NVME, that's the way to be free. No more waiting, no more waiting, no more waiting. Joe's machine runs fast now. Now Joe's smiling when he boots up his ride. Now Joe's smiling when he boots up his ride. Files low quick, no more tears to hide. From HDD to NVMe, from HDD to NVMe, from HDD to NVME, that's the way to be free. So if you're hurting with a slow machine, so if you're hurting with a slow machine, make that change today, fastest thing you've seen. From HDD to NVMe, from HDD to NVME, from HDD to NVME, that's the way to be free. From HDD to NVME, that's the way to be free. From HDD to NVME, from HDD to NVME.